Hi, my name is Marcel Bradley. My Indian name is, well, I was given my Indian name as a young girl by my late Aunt Rita Bradley, and at the time it was Iitaanɔɔn'i, meaning girl. And now that I'm, where I'm at in my life, my name is now Iitaanɔɔn'i, meaning woman. And I also was given a second name, and this name was given to me in a ceremony. And that name is Pitta Bihawas, meaning old woman bear. Pitta Bihawas, old woman bear. And I was born at the Fort Belknap Hospital in October of 1969. I'm from the Hayes community. My tribal affiliation is Aaniiih, and my parents are the late Marcel Bradley, and my biological father is Gilbert Bradley Sr., the late Gilbert Bradley Sr., and I was raised by by the late William Bradley. My maternal grandparents are the late Robert Melvin Jones Sr. of White Earth, Minnesota, and the late Ruby May Horseman, there at Fort Belknap. My paternal grandparents are the late George Bradley and the late Mabel Mann. I have 7 children, 4 daughters and 3 sons. I am blessed with 18 grandchildren and 2 granddaughters. Being Aaniiih to me means that I am here because of my ancestors and what they went through. And it's really, now that I'm older in my life, it really touches my heart to be a Aaniiih, to realize who I am and where I come from. And being an Aaniiih, I don't know my language, and I regret that, not being home there, moving away. That's one of the things that I didn't get to learn, is my language. And when so it's pretty important to me now in my life of being an Aaniiih. I went to school out at Hayes Lodgepole. I went there, my whole school year, all my school years, and until I was in high school. And my family was going through some hard times then when I was in high school, so we kind of moved around. So I wasn't able to finish high school. So I got my GED a year after the year I was supposed to graduate. So my education was really important to me. But, under circumstances that I was living in, I wasn't able to finish high school. Growing up, I didn't hear too many people speak in Aaniiih or Nakota. The one person that I do remember that taught us some words here and there was the late John Stiffarm. He used to ride a white horse wherever he went. He was always on horseback. And he was the one that spoke Aaniiih to us when I was really little, when he'd come to visit. But other than that, I never heard it. Well, that's a big shift, with living on and off, but there's so much similarities now. Living on the reservation when I was young, that was my life. Everything that we did, and it just was normal to us, our way of life, or the way we lived, living on a reservation. And but when I moved off the reservation, I moved to Havre, and I didn't. I was young. I want to say I was young and dumb, and I kind of did my own thing, what I wanted to do, without regards to my upbringing, how I was brought up, and as far as our culture and our traditional ways. And I wanted to go to school. My education, I wanted to graduate from college. That was my goal. And I didn't stay in Havre too long. And from Havre, I moved to Billings. And Billings, I started working there. And it was way different. It was, almost like a cultural shock, because I was just this res girl, trying to make a living out in the white man's world. And I did housekeeping jobs, and I was kind of a quiet employee, because I didn't know what to expect with the, these working with the non-native. And so I just did what I was supposed to do, and that was it. And then I moved back to the reservation, actually not home there in Fort Belknap, but I moved to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in the early 90s. And from there, I've worked again, been off and on the reservations, and always went back to Billings. And one of the things, when I last lived in Billings, I was a CNA, and working with the residents and with non-native, there was, and it was really busy. It was so busy, the things that I had to do to take care of these people. And, I was like, that was a workout, and just everything, mentally and physically, the things that I had to do for these people to take care of them. And so I had moved back to the reservation again, and one of the things is my career is in healthcare. And so at this time, what I learned off the reservation, getting my CNA license and working with the people there, well, that's what I learned, how I learned it. And so when I come back to the reservation and I got into a job where I was taking care of our elderly, well, I was all ready to do everything for them. Whatever, just like, just hold their hand through the whole day. But I noticed I didn't have to do that. I was ready to do that, but I didn't have to do that, because our people still had, they still wanted to do things on their own. They wanted to take care of themselves, and they didn't want to be, where they were unable to do anything. They still had, I guess I didn't have to hold their hand, So that was really a big change. And I saw that, okay, you just have to kind of be there with them and just to guide them a little bit. But that was that's where I I started to pay attention to our people. And I started to pay attention of how our elders were compared to how they lived on the outside. The non-natives, there's a big difference. So, and then living in the cities, I didn't have that connection, that spiritual connection, because it's just a busy lifestyle that you're just going and going and going. But being on the reservation, you have time, to have your own space. You have time to be alone and to really think about things. And I appreciate it now. I humble myself that I'm living among our indigenous people. I may not be living at home, but I'm still surrounded by culture and tradition, and it's a good learning experience. And I'm glad that that I did that. I was able to live on and off the reservation. This kind of goes back to when I first left, leaving Fort Belknap. I didn't really know my culture, or I guess I knew it, but I wasn't involved with it. I wasn't participating. And so when I came here, it got me back to finding myself in my traditional ways and our ceremonies, and it made me want to be a part of what our people are doing. And so the Cheyenne people, they're really compassionate, and they welcome you, with they have big hearts, and they have their language. I hear their language I hear them speaking it every day. It's I know a few words, from hearing it all the time, and but their sun dances are very just makes you want to be humble, humble yourself when you see their sun dance. And I participated in the sweat lodges here, and it's all similar, and it's all for the same purpose, and it's for our healing, and it's for prayers, and so I'm glad that I'm still able to be a part of the culture. No, I didn't. Not Aaniiih. I don't know my Aaniiih language, and I don't know the Aaniiih, the way they do their ceremonies, or even their sweat lodges, or Sundance. I've never been to a Sundance there in Fort Belknap, and I've never went into a sweat lodge there in Fort Belknap. But I grew up the Cree, knowing the Cree way in Rocky Boy. I had an uncle, my late uncle. He was a ceremonial person, and so that's how I grew up, was going to these ceremonies all my life. And then I also went to church with my grandmother, but I just it's really a good thing, because it instills an experience in you that you won't forget when you go through our ceremonies. You may not, I'm fortunate enough to have taken all my children through the ceremony that I grew up going to, but that doesn't mean that they're going to follow those ways. They may go to church, or they may want to be a Christian or Catholic or something like that, but our ceremonies are very they're very real. And so when I growing up going to these ceremonies, it just made me want to go even more, because I felt at peace. I felt I was always wanting to learn about them and know more about them. And so, in some of it I forgot, because there was a time here, growing up in our traditional ways, in Rocky Boy, well, as we get older, our teenage years are, we think we know it all and everything. Well, that was also me too. And I kind of pushed our ways aside. And like I said, I'd done my own thing and wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I just kind of left that alone for a bit, for some years. And I'm back in there, it's always been there. And I didn't forget about it, but I just wasn't, I didn't have nobody to guide me, to tell me to keep, go back to your ceremonies, go back. I didn't have that. So I had to make myself, go back. I had to give myself some self-pep talks, I guess, just in a way to tell myself, this is where you need to be, and you need to go back to these ceremonies. You need to connect that way. Okay, from looking in on the outside, it can be really, I guess people will say, well, you don't live here anymore, so, you don't know. But I have lived there even as I got older. I have lived there. I've tried to move home 3 times in the past, maybe 15 years. And I don't know, it just, it's heartbreaking looking in from the outside. And it's not just Fort Belknap, it's every reservation in Indian country. We all are facing the same thing. It's no different. It's just that we live in a different, community, a different area. But our problems are all the same. And so for Fort Belknap to do better for the elders, these are the things that I feel need to be really looked at. Is one thing I really like about when I go home and I drive through Fort Belknap is I stop at the buffalo. The buffalo are right there at 3 Buttes. And I think that, like I said, this is just my opinion, and what I see is there's nothing there for the elderly. There's no home there for them. You got our elders in Malta, Chinook, Havre, Great Falls, all of these places that are not, they've been taken away from their home. And we need to have a place for them. And I really believe that they need to develop a home for our elders near the buffalo. That kind of seems like it might be the central area of the reservation, where the 3 Buttes there. And if they develop that for our elders, they're still at home. They can still see the mountains, and it would bring so much more development there. If we start with the elders where the buffalo are, start there, and things will start to be, what's needed, like maybe a little store or something, to start developing right there. And it would be equal distances to the agency, and I believe like Lodgepole, Dotson, and Hayes, it'll be centralized. But we really need to bring our elderly people home, and we really need to support them in our culture and our traditional ways, and go there and learn from them. Take our children there, our grandchildren. We're lost, and we're looking for guidance. And I know it's even hard with some of our elders now that are kind of set in their ways and everything. But if we just sit and spend time with them, and get to know them, you know, communication and that bond with them. They'll start opening up and they'll start telling us stories, you know, a long time ago. And they'll tell us, you know, and then we can start piecing everything together that we need to know, that our children need to know. Because I'm feeling it, you know, I should have listened to what my grandmother said. You know, I should have listened to some of the things I heard from other elders, you know, like old John Stiffarm. I remember him, you know, just like yesterday, but I can't remember some of the things that he told me because I wasn't paying attention, and I should have. But like, you know, any other family growing up on the reservation, you know, we all have the struggle with alcohol. So I grew up in an alcoholic home. And then nothing really until, you know, a little bit later in my life, then my folks put the alcohol away, you know, and then we went to our ceremonies. And so that's where I really found what I was looking for, I guess, at a really young age. And so that's what we need our elders to have their own home, you know, when they can't take care of themselves anymore, but yet they still have what is that word I'm looking for? They still have self-respect. They still want to take care of themselves, but they just need that home, you know, and it's not there for them. There's nothing there, you know. So I feel really bad for them because you think about it, and yet up there when you're living among everybody there on the reservation, it's normal that they're in all of these outside places. You know, it's like, oh, they're in Malta, or, you know, they're in Havre, and that's not good for our people. And we see it as normal the way it is, because we are losing our spirituality, our tribe. You know, our tribe is losing we're losing our ways of who we are and where we come from. And if we don't take care of our elders, you know, that we already see it. It's already happening. We're not taking care of our elders. And some of our elders now, like, I never thought I would be calling myself an elder, you know. I'm 56 years old, but I've seen enough to sort this all out by now, you know, on my age and where I'm at in my life. And it's sad. It's really sad that when I drive through there, and I thought, man, you know, Northern Cheyenne, they have their own place for their people. And although it's off the reservation, and, you know, it's I guess we want to run them. We want to run everything. We want to mock how the white man does things on our reservations. And we need to change our mindset. We need to change our thinking. We need to get back to our roots, where we come from and who we are. And we need to, you know, empower our elders, and we need to just connect with them and provide for them. And I think everything will start falling into place, and maybe our people will start to listen, and maybe they'll stop. You know, the thing that I see a big problem on any reservation, but it's normal in Fort Belknap with alcohol. You know, the sale of alcohol. And some people, you know, you got people that will say, well, they're going to get it anyway. And it's revenue. You know, we need that money. And actually, if you think about alcohol, And, you think about our ancestors. Our ancestors, our grandmothers knew what this alcohol was because they saw it. The men didn't see it because the men would come back to their home fires, and they would have this alcohol spirit. And even as a little girl, growing up, I would hear older people talking about that alcohol spirit. And when you let that alcohol spirit into your body, your own spirit will leave you. And so you're not talking that person, that person may look like them, sound like them, but their spirit isn't them. And, a lot of our elders, they also grew up that way. Alcohol has become normal to all of us as Indigenous people, but it's not meant for us. It wasn't made for us. It was brought here by the white man. And that's the, bottom line to all of our problems, even for our elders, is alcohol. And once we acknowledge that this alcohol spirit is the problem, then everything will fall into place of us healing, because we're not going to heal the way we're living. And we're trying to, we're going to make some more laws and make some more make some more rules here, and we're going to put it on paper, but that really, that's not going to mean anything when it comes down to where we have to take care of each other. And we need our elders, we really do. Once we start opening up to them and, talking with them also, like I said, we're gonna build that relationship with them. Because the way I see it now on any reservation, our elders aren't being respected. They have, and some of them, I hate to say this, but even some of our elders are, can get pretty ornery and be very vocal. And so I just, I believe in my prayers, and I have faith in our ways that there's going to be good things coming, but we have to get through what we're going through right now, and that's talking about things like we're doing now, getting our words out there, sharing our stories. So I really believe that Fort Belknap needs to bring our elders home, and so we can start healing with them. One of the reasons why I moved off the reservation, I wanted to go to school. I wanted to, at that time, I wanted to be a nurse. I guess I always had that in me, that I wanted to care for other people. And so I, started in Havre, went to school there, and then I transferred to Billings, and like I said, life happened, and I was young and dumb, and I also, I just kind of let school go to the wayside too, and so that's what got me off from the reservation, and that's but I think what called me back all the time is having that those memories of peace and just being free and not worrying about all the city life and everything, all of this, living the white man way. But I'm glad that I'm where I'm at today. My biggest challenge living away from home is I don't know my language. I can't, I guess I can't really share what I know, out in the community, because I'm not from Northern Cheyenne, and I'm not at home either. But I feel that, that my experience is maybe my story might help somebody. And so that's one of my challenges, is not being able to really get involved in the community, because I guess I kind of have that in the back of my mind. Well, if I try to go and speak at anything here, well, you're not from there, you're not Northern Cheyenne, but I can't do that up there either, because I'm not there. So I think that's my biggest challenge, is just not being able to share with my people, my tribal affiliation. And but I do know a lot of people here, and I share like, kind of like a one-on-one story with some ladies. I have a lot of friends here, and so we talk a lot, but I'm not involved in anything here. I moved back there. I own a house there. My oldest daughter lives in my house, and I've tried to live there 3 times, and there's a lot that I don't know if, should be put out there yet on media about, like, some of my experiences, because it's really it's more of a spiritual spiritual thing than anything, and it's really just something hard to talk about. But I think about home all the time. I pray for our people at home all the time, and I really wish that something could be done about the alcohol there, and I pray that they build a home for our elders. And that's another thing, is our homes. We build these buildings to be square, and when we do, everything is in a circle. And I guess it would be a good thing to see if a home was made for our elders in a building that is like a teepee, round. It's almost like, if you envision it and you see development, if you could envision our elders being in a home near 3 buttes, and just think of all of the things that could prosper from that, and our buffalo being right there. We were, the white man tried to wipe us out, and they studied us, they watched us, and they saw what the buffalo meant to us. It meant everything to us. The buffalo provided food for us, clothing, shelter, everything. And so they tried to wipe out the buffalo, to eliminate us. But we're still here, and so are our buffalo. And that's really, nobody sees that. I haven't heard anybody talk about things like this. I haven't even, some of the elders that I have spoken with, I don't even know if a lot of our elders now, like, say my age, even realize what the significance of the buffalo, what they are to us. And they're still here with us for a reason. And we're gonna need them, and actually we do need them. You know, we needed them. They've been here all this time, and we've been a blind eye to them, I guess. And we acknowledge that they're there. You know, oh yeah, we know what the buffalo means to us as Indigenous people, but we're not, I guess, acknowledging their spirituality, the spirit of the buffalo. We're not acknowledging that their spirit is here, and they're just waiting for us to ask them to help us. And if I had asked the elderly lady up there when I was living there to, I just wanted to go and acknowledge a buffalo. And she brought her, she lifted her pipe, and, we had some other ladies show up, and it was a really cold day. It was rainy, cloudy, and but we went anyway. One of my friends there, and we didn't think it was going to turn out. But when this elderly lady showed up and shared her story with us, and she smoked her pipe and talked to us. Well, this guy, we were taking off our coats, and by the time we realized it, after she was done talking and everything, and the sky was all blue. There was, there was even any clouds there. And we could see the buffalo coming closer. We didn't see him at all when we were there, when we first got there and started. And pretty soon we could kind of see the buffalo coming kind of in a distance, but they weren't there before, they were coming closer. And so I really feel that they heard us. And, a lot of our people are, when I say lost, I mean spiritually. And these are things we don't want to talk about. And so when I moved home, I tried to talk about some of these things. But nobody, it's like nobody listened. Or nobody cared. And it's still the same like that today, even anywhere. People, we're not listening. We're trying to be involved, but in a negative way. We want to be judgmental. And that's what I see when I moved home. Is once I tried to be, involved in a couple things, it's like that compassion isn't there for our way of life spiritually. And so I guess I don't know when I'll move home again or if I'll move home, but I'm just glad that my house is able to provide shelter for my daughter and her family. And it's just I really don't know if I'm gonna move home. I can't say when, or it's just like wherever I'm meant to be. And so right now, this is where I'm meant to be. I would have to say the man who raised me, Willie Bradley. He showed me. How do I want to say this? I guess he showed us the way to the ceremonial way. He got us involved. He took my uncle as his brother, this medicine man up in Rocky Boy. He took Willie as his brother and showed him a lot of ways of fasting and the sun dance and sweats. So that's how, I grew up. But, like I said, being young and dumb, at the time we were all there, I put all of that aside, and but when I would have any questions, I would call him, like something about a dream, or okay, this happened to me, but tell him things that some things that kind of happened that you don't know if it was real or not, or maybe see somebody walk by and they're not there, and he would always say, well, how did you feel when you saw that? Was you scared, or did it, bother you, or, I said, no, I wasn't scared. No, it didn't scare me. And okay, well, it was just somebody checking on you, our grandfathers are just checking on you. So I would say, oh, okay, and, but he really, showed me took us as young kids, me and my sisters and my brother, we all went to these ceremonies all the time, and so he was a big influence in my life. But also, we are just, we're human, and there was a lot of times where I wasn't around or anything, just from moving away and all this, but sometimes it wasn't, I didn't want to hear things from him when he was trying to, I guess, I don't want to say discipline, but when he was trying to tell me something maybe I needed to know or needed to hear, and I didn't want to listen, so, but yeah, I knew the message and what he was getting at or whatever, and so yeah, he played a big part in my life, and I'm grateful that he raised me, and I think that if he didn't raise me, I wouldn't have known these ways. So I am grateful for him. That's really a kind of a tough question, and I think for the future generation, we have to look at a lot of things. It's just not just. It's more than respect and acknowledging. I guess our leaders are becoming, there a lot of leaders nowadays are younger, and I would like to tell our young people to listen, and look, we need to have the rites of passage for our young people. We need to have rites of passage for our girls, so they'll have that self-respect of their bodies, and then our young men, they need to know the rites of passage also, so they also have respect for themselves and for the female. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to do, and maybe bringing it into the schools, have these young people, ask, help us, go to the elders, go to the ceremonial people, and ask them, show me, or ask questions. Ask any kind of questions that they may have, to the people who have seen things, who have fasted, and who have sun danced, and who run the sweat lodges. Go to them, because that's where it's going to come back to everything we're doing today, it's all gonna be gone. And what's gonna hold us together on our homelands is our ceremonies, our traditional ways. This is what's gonna bring us, keep us whole, and it's gonna carry us on into the future. Because if we lose what we have now at the rate we're losing it, our knowledge and of our people, and we're gonna be no different than the white man. We're Aaniiih, we're Nakota, and we're all of these people, all of these people because of our ancestors. And we're not a white, I'm not a white woman, so I don't know, I can't be that white woman. I may have to live in the white man world now, but my heart, our young people have to know their heart. That's just like how I had to find my heart and my, and my soul, my spirit, and connect them in my mind. And I guess I really want to stress to them to not to forget who they are and where they come from, and remember, this is the thing I see in our young people now is the alcohol is getting worse. Now this meth and these other drugs are, and just the hate, there's so much hate, and there's so much violence now, and it's and our young people need to know what alcohol really is. They need to know that this alcohol spirit will take away your spirit, and it will use your body to do what it wants. But yet, all of the people, we're going to see that person, doing these bad things, and then we're going to want them prosecuted. We're going to want them, we're going to be judgmental, and we're going to want justice. All of those kind of things will start to come at our people, and they're young. Look at our young men need to be told now, come and help, go, you should be out gathering wood, or, you should be helping your parents, even your siblings, and helping them at the homes and, in the community. But nowadays, our young men are, they go and drink, and they go and beat their spouses, their girlfriends, and they do all of these bad things now. And they're not listening, and they have no respect. And also, our young people need to respect those families who are mourning when they lose a loved one. Nowadays, you go to a funeral or a wake, and they're sitting there, high on meth, or they're sitting there drunk, or they're drinking right in front of you. That needs to stop. Those things, our elders need to point this out to them and tell them, you don't do that. There's one Cheyenne word that I guess I hear, when we talk to the little ones, they say "Navitnaship." That means don't do that. And so, I'll hear once in a while, elderlies, when there's little ones, when they act out or something, I hear them say that. So that's one of the words I know. And so we need to start speaking up to our young people like that. Even to people, I feel at my age, we need to have that conversation, the things that we don't want to talk about. And the bottom line to all of our problems on our reservations is alcohol. It brings about our people doing bad things to even their own family members now. To me, the reservation is just a white man word, but what it is, it's our homeland. That's all we got now. That's what they put us on now, this little patch of land. And we still have to make it a home. But the way our people are living today, they're bringing all of this. And one of the things that our young people aren't doing either is they're not bringing they're not listening. They want to do things their way, or they'll argue with you. They like to argue, and then when things like when things happen, well, then our justice system gets in there, has to get involved. And so what's really hurtful, the way I see our homelands, is having these police, the cops, and these jails. Our reservations have jails now, and we're locking up our own people the way the white man used to lock us up. Now we're doing it to each other. And, we lie and we cheat. And that stuff needs to stop. We're not, we have to, I guess, open our eyes and change our thinking, change our mindset of the way that we're doing things. And, just start to acknowledge, what Creator gave us. He gave us the sunrise. So every morning, lift a glass of water to the sun, and that water will be blessed. Bless your water that you drink. And at the end of the day, when the sun goes down, thank them for giving you another day. Thank Creator for giving you this day that now you're going to rest. And, our people, we're so used to living at nighttime now. I remember hearing things that you don't go outside at night after dark. Excuse me. I still believe that, but because of maybe the things, our work, sometimes we have to, our work hours or whatever, we have to be out, or we're traveling, things like that. But we shouldn't be doing things like that. Sunset, we should start to end our day and be at home. And our young people do not make their houses a home. And it's the women who need to make their house a home. But now our young women, they drink and they have no self-respect. They allow things to come in their home that aren't good. And so that's why, these bad spirits, they come in. This is what the alcohol brings with them, or this meth. And those spirits will stay. They stay there. And they'll hide in the corners. And that's why we have child abuse. That's why we have domestic violence. That's why we stab each other. We shoot each other. We beat each other up. And that's where all that hate comes from, because we're bringing it into the homes. And our home is supposed to be the safest place, and it's not. And so we, instead of saying, questioning why, and right away we think, well, we need more we need more police, we need stronger, I guess, laws of what they're going to do to them if they, break these laws or, whatever. We're living, we're mocking the white man and trying to live on our reservations. And our home, if our young people start to look at the reservations as our home, and what you bring into the home is going to stay there. And so what we bring onto our reservations is going to stay there. And Fort Belknap is bringing alcohol to the reservation. And you'll hear people say, well, what about meth, or what about this, and what about these other things? But it's that alcohol spirit that opens that door, and how do you want to say that? Brings its buddies with them, kind of in a way to say it. All of these things they come at us. So that's one of the things our young people need to hear, and they need to have respect for themselves. They need to learn that respect before they'll have respect for anybody else. And so when I see our people being disrespectful, it just tells me, okay, they have no respect for themselves. And what's broken, we need to, our young people, for our future, for our sustainability and our future, we need to, they just need to get up. They need to get off their butts. They need to help. They need to quit thinking that they have to be paid for everything that they do. We've become, also we have become where we want that money. Money means everything to us, and there's gonna come a time where we're not gonna get that money. We're not gonna, and our young people we're so used to the government, government handout. And we already see today, excuse me, we already see today the things, that the government is doing. And we need to become self-sufficient. We depend, especially our young people, they'll go and fill out a application to get all of this help, this, government help, when, if you think about it, let's take, for example, this LEAP program. This is government money. It's a handout. So this so much is allotted, to, depending on how many people on your tribe, or, how, I don't know all of the details of how it's worked, but, everybody wants that help, and they'll use it for propane, or, those the few that have wood stoves will use it for wood. But what we should be doing is using that money while we still can get it, and buy wood stoves for every house, every home, and teach our young people, or any of our people, how to respect that element of fire. So that way, make them go through a class or something where an elder will talk about this element of fire, and how we need to respect it, and how it will keep us warm, and how it will help us prepare our food. And because we may not, down the road, the way things are for our future, we may not have this anymore, or we're not going to have this anymore. And we're so used to going and turning a knob to turn up the heat, and this is where our young men can be out gathering wood for the community. for all of the people, not just the ones that, what do we say, qualify, for this government handout. I would really like to see our young people create a sustainable livelihood for the future and for our elders, and for, without the government, without needing the government. And that's a lot of our problem right there, is that government, yes, they're supposed to take care of us, but, and our young people need to learn about these treaties. I myself, I'm still learning, but from what I know, I don't like what the government does to us. I don't like how they still have control of us. And because it brings about, what's the word I'm looking for? It makes us feel, I guess in a negative way. It makes us have animosity among us, because we have all of these government programs, but yet everybody doesn't get any of it. It's not distributed to everybody, and just certain ones that qualify. And so it brings that animosity, because of the people will start complaining, and it goes on and on. And if we can get away from that, because then we won't have them to say, well, just as certain people will get them, everybody will get it instead. If we all work together, if our young people start realizing what this alcohol is, and start opening their eyes and their ears and listening and learning what respect is, and especially self-respect. And once they learn that, it's going to carry them a long ways in communicating and working with the whole community, with their people. We have a bunch of young men, and I see it everywhere. I see it here. Our young guys are, Saturday morning, they're all hungover. Are they being life flighted to Billings because they're partying? Somebody got stabbed, somebody got shot, or there's always something. And from the time when I was young, it's changing all of that. I see a change. And there has been bear sightings here, right into the community, and everybody was making comments about it, getting scared. Some people were scared, and some people wanted to shoot it. And I thought, everybody has all of these comments about it, but to me, it was, this bear is one of our, grandfathers, and it came right into the community to show us, to show the people that they're real, that they want to help. But instead, everybody got scared or wanted to chase it off and kill it. And they didn't see that, because that's how lost our people are. And if we as people are out, being elder, if we're not talking and stepping out of our comfort zone to educate these our younger generation, well, we're, it's not going to be good for our future. And it almost makes you want to cry. So yeah, our younger generation really need to open their eyes and their ears, and they need to listen, and they need to ask questions, and they need to understand the effects of this alcohol spirit and how strong it is with our people. And it's just not at Fort Belknap, it's down here, it's everywhere in Indian country. We're all fighting the same fight And I see it looking at home and looking at other reservations, it's the same thing. And it's alcohol. And, if our people, especially our young people, it's almost like they don't care. They have no direction. And yes, that's probably our fault too, as we're getting up there in age. And I didn't share all of this with my children. What I should have, I should have shared with them what I learned, or my ways of how I grew up, but I didn't. And it was because I was in a abusive marriage for 14 years. So I didn't say anything about anything, really. I was just trying to survive. And my children grew up in a domestic violence home. And but it was up to me to change that. And I did. I changed that. But we just have to keep communicating and, keep not get so, discouraged about what our people are doing. Instead, help them, and that, that person that we look at who is maybe intoxicated, well, they are also meant to be here too, and it's just that alcohol spirit got a hold of them. And they found we all have weak spots, and that's where the alcohol got a hold of them. And so I would really like to see our young people do something about that alcohol spirit on our homelands, and the other things that they people bring into our homes, and I believe that once we get a grip of, it's not going to go away. It's never going to go away, because as long as the white man's here, there's going to be alcohol. And as long as the white man's here, there's going to be, all of this justice and all of this kind of thinking. But our young, we're unique. Indigenous people, we are unique because we were once the closest people to Creator. And we were connected with the land and, the sky and the earth, our Mother Earth, and all of the elements, and even a tree, it gives you life. So those are some of the things that we need to have our young people start paying attention to. And they need to start having respect when there's a death in the family. And they need to, I want to share this with the young people. And it's something that maybe it may have come across somebody else's mind. I mean, I'm sure it did. But I'm going to talk about something, and it's about the spirit of suicide. Okay, growing up, I was, I didn't remember a lot of things that was told to me, but I guess the important things stuck in my head. And one of the things is I was told that when you take your own life, whatever you're feeling when you do that, it's going to be 10 times worse once you end your life. Your spirit, your spirit is going to suffer. And I have a story that, and this alcohol spirit came over me twice in my life. And I'm so thankful that I had remembered that in the back of my mind. It was tucked away back there. But what happened the first time was when I was married. Like I said, I was in a bad marriage, and I thought the only way I'm going to get away from this kind of life is to not be here anymore. So, but I had, at that time, I only had about maybe 4 of my kids, and then I looked at them and I thought, man, this is my life. My children are my life. So I was able to realize, hey, what was I thinking? Why was I thinking that I know better? That's not what I'm supposed to do. You don't do that. And so, everything happens for a reason. And so to this day, I'm grateful because that's a very strong spirit. And the second time was actually in 2013. I was in a car wreck there in Fort Belknap, and I was hit head on by a drunk driver. And to this day, I still have health problems because of that. But so after this car wreck, it was in an area there where I guess I thought about it, but I didn't say anything. In this area where I wrecked, others had wrecked there, and they died. They all died, and it was really crazy because I survived that. I survived that car wreck, and it was pretty bad. And I had my daughter in there, and I had, at the time, one of my grandsons, he was only 8 months old, and I had my son-in-law in there. And we all walked away from it. But, I sustained some injuries that I'm going to have to live with. And so, trying to survive after this car wreck, I had a lot of anger. I had so much hate of what I would, and I used to even think about what I was going to do to that person if I ever saw them. That's how much hate I had in me, and I wanted them to hurt, and so one of the things when I was married was I had to go to church. We had to go to church. And so I was going to the Lutheran church here for, about 10 years, and so anyways, when I went through, going through all of that, I listened to the pastor in his sermons. I paid attention, and all the sermons that he would talk about, share or talk, I compared it to what I knew traditionally. And there's a similarity there. And I never, remembered too much of what he said, but I was always thinking, at the moment, thinking about what he was saying and what I knew. And one of the things that this pastor said was that we are all God's children. And, I heard it and everything. And I thought, at the time, this was a long time ago. And at that time, I thought, that's true. We're all God's children. So, but it didn't really resonate with me years later after this car wreck. I was in I suffered headaches. Like, it was beyond a migraine headache. I don't know. I can't explain this headache because I still have some nerve damage. And so I was really hurting, and I was so angry, and, I had all of this I just had this heaviness on me. And so I wanted to go to a sweat. So I went in a sweat lodge here, and that's when it hit me that we are all God's children. Even this man, these people that did that, they are God's children. And it's that spirit of alcohol that was on them that caused all of this. And even though, I realized that, and as a human being, we thinking about it, and then all of these mixed feelings I had, well, I didn't realize, I didn't think about that. And I was able to forgive him, to realizing, hey, this is that alcohol spirit. And even though I knew it, it didn't, like I said, it didn't resonate with me until I was in that sweat lodge, where I was able to forgive him. But I don't know how to say this, but I guess it's kind of something hard to talk about when you talk about spirituality. You don't know how other people are going to take it, or what. But I guess when this all happened, big lift off my shoulders, but I still had to go through the healing. And I was on a lot of medication for these headaches, and for the nerve damage, and I couldn't work. I couldn't, do a lot of things. And so once I went into that sweat lodge and I was able to forgive him, well, things start changing for me. But it didn't take away the pain. I was still in a lot of pain. It got easier, but there was still so much pain. And I couldn't get off from these pills. And so I thought, I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle this pain. So I put all my, all of these, pain pills I was on, and everything. And I was taking about 5 different pills, and it was winter time, and I remember it was snowing out, and it was these big snowflakes coming down, and it was so calm. There was no breeze, just like nothing. And I got up that morning, and I put all of these pills in my pocket, and I looked outside, and I thought, I'm gonna take these pills. I'm gonna take all of them. And I start walking towards we had this patio door there, and I was gonna go out that door, and here off to the side there was our dining room area, and my significant other, he was sitting there, and I didn't know. And I get to this door, and he asked me where I was going. And I looked at him, and I said, I'm just going to go stand outside. I just feel I feel like everything's closing in on me. And he said, okay, well, I just come home to check on you. I'm going to go back to work. So he left, and I went outside, and I was standing there, and started crying, and I knew I shouldn't do that, that was the hard part, but man, this spirit is pretty strong, and so here, once I realized how quiet it was, and these big snowflakes, and I didn't hear anything, didn't even hear cars, or didn't hear dogs barking, nothing. Well, I went back inside, and while I was standing outside, it hit me. It clicked in my mind to do a food offering. And so I went back inside, and because I knew how to do this from, seeing this growing up, I was able to do a food offering, and I went and set it out, put it out. I put out some berries and some salmon. Put that out, and then I went back in and I just sat there and cried, and then that feeling went away. So in order for our young, and this is really a growing problem with our young people, and even our, any of us, we have to have spirituality, or the spirit of alcohol, the spirit of suicide, all of these types of spirits are going to come at us, and they're going to get us. But if we acknowledge all of this in a spiritual way, it's going to really carry us a long ways. And, I always also want to tell the young people that when there's a wake or a funeral, have respect for yourself, and don't go and put that alcohol in your body, or that meth or whatever other drugs. And don't go and don't have hate in your heart, because there's when there's death, that's a transformation of going from the physical being into a spiritual, a spiritual happening. This is really happening. And so once we do that, once our people start, doing things like that, it's gonna make it better for the rest of us. And I think that's what really needs to happen. And they need to start helping in the community. Start, asking, what can I do? How can I help? You don't, if you want to say, well, we need to go get wood for our people. Well, I can't because I don't have a chainsaw. That's not an answer. That's not a solution. Go get an axe. How did they do it back in the day? They didn't have chainsaws. I heard that. I said, maybe go gather some wood. Go get wood. I don't have gas. I don't have a chainsaw. They have every kind of excuse that you can think of. But go back to thinking, ask questions about how we lived a long time ago, because that's what's going to save us or in the future. Even though there's this technology and, all of this kind of stuff, how we live, these cell phones, electricity, everything, we're not going to have it. We're not going to have it forever. And right now we should be preparing for those kind of things that will happen. And those are the things that's going to happen, is we're going to lose because of the government. Let's start trying to live like we don't have a government, that we have to account to, be accountable to. Let's start taking care of each other, and doing those kind of things. Let's stop those bad spirits from coming onto our homelands. Let's open our eyes and our ears now and start listening to each other and get ourselves grounded. And that's another thing we need to ground ourselves by standing. It may sound silly, but we need to get grounded so we know know these kinds of things by standing on Mother Earth barefoot. And just those are the things that will give us energy, good, clean energy. And not the ways of the way we're going today. We might as well be a white man and the things that we're doing today. But yeah, that's what I would want the young people to know.